Hello, everyone. Welcome to a brand new AF Chat. I'm Ariel from App Figures. I have Hannah with me today, and we're going to be talking about something that I think is so critical that so many people don't talk about. We have to talk about it, obviously. But before we get started, as per tradition, tell me what's in your cup and where you're from. Drop that in the chat and get ready to ask some questions. I am drinking. What am I drinking? Mint tea with honey. I went really simple today. Mint tea has been my favorite. I tried some other tea with spices that I don't really know what they are, but they're so delicious. But today is just mint. What's in your cup, Hannah? And where are you from?
So in my cup today, I have gone very simple water.
Nice.
This
Water's
is really, actually, I remember filling in, we were talking before about MySpace, and I remember filling in these MySpace bulletins saying, "What's your favorite drink?" And I was writing water when everyone was writing like a cool alcohol thing. And you know what? I've stuck through and through to it. So
that's
yeah,
good.
water. I live in London, so it needs to be filtered because you can't drink tap water in London unless you want to get sick.
Fair enough.
Um, not know that. But yeah, you don't drink London tap water. And I live in London, but I'm from in the north of England called Manchester, and
A
I'm
little
half
town.
Irish. Little town, small town, one of the third biggest city in the UK, in England at least, Manchester. But I've been living in London on and off for the last 13 years now. So yeah, it's good. It's cold at the moment. It's December. It's grey, but it's nice.
Yeah, I think New York is pretty much similar. It's very gray today here outside. It feels like
Mhm.
it's almost nighttime. And I don't think I've had tap water in New York ever since I moved here.
No, I
So,
don't think you should be doing New York either. You
yeah,
turn on the
probably not.
tap and just come out.
Probably not. I have too many filters. So many filters that the water is probably not even water anymore at this point. It's something. It's enriched,
No, it's
it's
just
filtered.
HO.
Yeah, exactly. H7O, who knows at this point? There's some stuff going on.
Exactly, exactly. Yeah. It's better for you that way, I think.
That's what they say. People do say the water tracker app is in the chat saying pure water. So you're not the only one with water here. We
I
got
love water.
water in Romania. We got Spain. Black coffee in Canada. So someone's going the other way.
Amazing.
Someone asked me if I squeezed lemon into my mint tea. Sometimes
Recording in
yes.
progress.
And we're recording apparently, so that's great. But we are no lemon in this cup because I didn't have fresh
Hmm.
lemon this morning. We got Long Island
No.
in the house. Red Devils.
Have you had
I'm not
have you
sure what
had
that
mint
is.
tea? Have you had mint tea in Morocco yet?
No, I've not had mint tea in Morocco, but I've had mint tea in the Middle East, where mint tea in the Middle East is a lot of mint and water. Like a little bit of water,
Hmm.
a lot of mint,
Yeah.
nothing else.
All mint.
It's delicious,
Yeah.
actually. I love actual real fresh mint, and I usually have it. I don't this morning. Well, it's morning here, but normally I do.
I invented a food this summer that was cooking
Invented.
bulgur wheat and coconut. I'm not very good at following recipes. I just decide what I'm going to put together.
Okay.
And I cooked my bulgur wheat in coconut milk, and then I put fresh mint through it. And
Oh
just
wow,
while we're on the mint train, like it was one of the most delicious things I've had. So yeah, mint. I'm a big mint stan. Just eat the mint. It's all good.
oh that's
What
awesome.
versus herb?
That's wild. I love mint and everything. It's so fresh. It's like the taste of life. I used to grow mint when I was really little. My mom and my dad had this huge mint area in our backyard, and I always thought that we made mint so we can
Recording
drink it in tea.
stopped.
But
Mhm.
I later discovered that it was just somehow it started growing by the water faucet outside, and no one stopped it. So we just used it.
Whoa,
Yeah,
that's how it
that's
all happened. That's
apparently.
amazing.
Hmm.
We had a lemon mint bush at our house
Ooh,
growing
interesting.
up.
Yep,
I remember like every time we'd go out to the car, we'd like rub the leaves and smell it, and it was the most delicious thing. So yeah, we would use that as well a little bit. But that's
that's
so
pretty
cool. It
awesome.
just grew organically. Wow.
It just happened.
Okay.
Alrighty, so I think it's time to get started. I think everyone is ready, and
Awesome.
let's see what are we going to be talking about today. So I've been saying this for through all the social media and everything else that I've been talking about this live stream. There's this one thing that people don't think about that is so critical to well, making money in apps. And it's not your paywall, it's not the onboarding, but it's really the fundamental, the foundation of all of these. And that's what we're going to be talking about today, making your users actually use your app. And what does that mean? And what is that called? And how do you track that? And how do you know if they're using your app? And that's activation. So we're going to be talking about activation, something that not enough people talk about on stage or off stage or in videos. And you do talk about this all the time, and you're really excited about this. So that's actually perfect. And for those of you who don't know Hannah, Hannah runs an agency now, but she's been doing this for a long time. Hannah actually introduced me on stage at APS in San Francisco. That's how we got to know
Yeah.
each other. And I think you called me a superstar, but I think you're really a superstar. And you told me stories that suggest you really are. So we're going to go with that. But I'm going to let Hannah, I'm going to give Hannah the microphone. Tell us a little bit about yourself. What have you done? Why do you like apps so much? And then we'll talk about lessons that people can take and improve their apps and make more money. The stage is yours, Hannah.
Thank you so much, Ariel. Lovely to be reunited again. As Ariel said, we met in San Francisco in September, I think it was, just 5 minutes before going on stage together. But yeah, my background really and how I got into apps was a little unconventional. I didn't really understand that apps were a thing when I was a kid. They weren't even. So I actually started by getting involved in the music industry. I was in music for quite a while, about 10 years. I was working at a live music recording company. I was working in live music, planning events, doing all of this stuff, tour managing, artist managing, and so on. And then over a decade ago, I started getting involved in music tech, right? And so from there, it was really, music, then music tech. And after that, I decided I'm going to stay in the tech side of things, not the music side of things. The reason for that was I really felt like I was being kind of intellectually challenged a lot more there. I'd been running these events for like 10 years at this point. And when I got involved in the app side of things, I was working directly on the product. I was working on all of the data. I was really enjoying all of that. And it was really this interesting blend of like the analytical and the creative that I really enjoyed. And so after this, I kind of went from one app that I was at, which was a live music discovery app. It grew quite tremendously in my time there. I was there pre-launch for the first almost 3 years of its life, to a nightlife app. And then I went through an accelerator program. I started doing a lot of coaching when I was there, for other people in startups and in apps. And then from there, I got into subscription products. So I've been in subscription now for about 6-7 years, as well. So over that time have been over that last kind of over a decade time, I've worked with hundreds of different apps. I coach on an accelerator now. I created a pathway around product, around activation, around meta ads as well. So really, for me, I'm thinking about this full funnel approach constantly. How are we, zooming out at every point and making sure that what we're doing later on is reflected right at the top of the funnel, and making sure that all of these flows and these funnels are working really well together so that we can bring in top quality users and convert them. And the reason I like apps, I just love the challenge behind them. I think no two things are the same. Everything is different, and I'm always challenged. There's always something to do. There's always something to improve. I've got that kind of, I need extra dopamine. So, I'm running all these experiments all the time. I'm winning, I'm finding things out. Like, I just enjoy it. It's really fun for me. It's like you're kind of constantly gambling. And I don't gamble. So this is this is how I do it.
Like I said, superstar. You do all these things. That's so cool. I think that's when you love something, when you're passionate about something, you end up doing everything around it. And I think that's how you also get better at it. So clearly, you know a thing or two or seven about apps, which is why you're here.
Something like that.
A little bit. So we're going to be talking about activation. And before we even get there, one of the questions that I've been getting a lot over the last probably month or two, ever since I started talking about paywalls and onboarding, is do I need an onboarding? And do I need to put my paywall at the end? And how long does my onboarding need to be? And those are all fine questions, and we can answer them. They do have answers. But there's a fundamental concept that sits on the bottom of all of this and kind of makes it easier for you to answer these questions. And that's activation. That's when You posted on LinkedIn, I think yesterday or the day before, something about your users don't start using your app until they really start using your app or something like that. And that's really the key to all of this. So tell us more about what does that mean for someone to be activated? When we say activation, what do we even mean?
I think there's a really big misconception around what is activation. And actually, at the event that we met at, I ran a roundtable on activation. And I started that roundtable by asking the room, what is your activation point inside your product? And people were telling me it's when someone clicks play, or it's when someone does this first thing, or when someone signs up, or it's when someone opens the app for the first time, or all of these different things. And I just went wrong, 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 wrong. These are not correct. The way in which we need to be thinking about activation is this stage from everything from whenever someone first starts using a product until they are being retained. So there's this whole big gulf between that is the activation period. And
Mm,
until we're confident that someone isn't going to be churning unless there are some big movements in their life, like they have a context change in their life, this whole part is activation. So let me explain it to you a little bit more. I was working with a nightlife app um, several years ago, and what we thought at the very beginning was someone downloading the app and starting to look at the different bars in the app was activation, right? And this is something that's very common. I will often talk to companies and they'll tell me, okay, I'm a workout app. And when someone has viewed 6 workouts in my app, they're activated. Or when they start to click on something, they're activated. Now, we thought going into this process when we were starting to learn about it, okay, someone has viewed 20 different bars, they're activated inside the product. And what we found out was, by the way, the premise of this app, probably one of the easiest companies to market ever. You may agree with me. It's an app that you download and then you get free drinks in bars. That's it. There's no catch.
can't really ask for
So
anything else, really. I mean, if that's
there's
not
no
an easy
catch.
one to market, we're doing something really wrong.
Exactly. And so that was the premise of the product. Like the key core action was going to a bar and getting a free drink. So taking the digital and making it physical. And what we then hypothesized was going to the bar and getting your first free drink was activation. But what we would see is between that first install and the sign up, there would be a drop. And then between the first sign up or your only sign up and your first redemption, there would be a huge drop, right? So doing that redemption, if we were seeing 98% of people going on to number 2, number 3, we would feel like, okay, maybe that's activation. But that isn't what we saw. We saw then between number 1 and number 2, there was another huge drop. And actually, from the second redemption, as long as they happened on different days, more than one day apart, we would see that after that second redemption, like 95% of people would go on to do a third redemption. And so this is the activation point. So we then go and talk to customers about it. Why are you dropping off here? Why is there such a big delta between 1 and 2 conversions? And they would tell us, well, I used it the first time with my friends at the bar and they've been using it, but I don't really trust it. I feel really cheeky. That's the word they use. Cheeky. Whenever I go up to the bar and I ask for free drink. So whenever they've gone and done it in that context of doing it with their friends who's already familiar with the product, they feel like this sense of confidence. But then only when they go and do it with themselves is whenever they became activated and really saw the value of this product. And so this is what we want to be thinking of. So, that's only 2 conversions there, but I've worked with companies which takes 20 conversions, 30 conversions of this core action to get to that point. And so we can talk a little bit more about how we identify and how we map that properly, if you like, as well.
Wow, that's all I can say. I mean, I can talk about this for the next hour, just that
Me
alone,
too.
which we probably shouldn't do because I think people want to know a little bit more. But so let's zoom out a little bit. So you said that you started by, yeah, exactly, zoom out a little bit. You said that you started by looking at the conversions between one action and another. So you had to map out all the different actions that people can take, and this is pretty easily. I guess this makes sense. The series of things: you download the app, you sign up, and then you go and get free drinks. But it's not really, because you go and get a free drink and then you need another free drink and another free drink and another free drink. And unless it becomes maybe not a habit, because that's kind of a weird way to talk about drinking, but if it becomes the kind of thing that you're comfortable using, then you'll continue using it. And you didn't really have a good way of knowing if people are comfortable using it. And even when you asked them, you had to know where to lead them to. So you had to kind of
Hmm.
get them in the right mindset before you asked, but why don't you do this? It doesn't make any sense to me.
Hmm.
So how did you continue from there? What was the
I'll,
next
I'll
step?
use I'll use a slightly different example, so we're not talking about drinking like it's a habit.
Yeah, definitely not.
But
It's free drinks. Free drinks are should be a habit. Actually, I
it
don't
was
know
a
about
bar
should.
discovery tool.
A bar discovery
Uh,
tool, exactly. Erase what I just said. We're talking about water,
um,
right? You're drinking
it was just
soda at a
water.
bar. Yeah, exactly.
It was just water. So I worked with an audio journalism app as well, and we did a similar process there. We've done this process on many different products, and with the audio journalism app, the premise of this product was download, sign up, listen to narrated articles from The Economist, Financial Times, The Guardian, like all of these publications. We would curate their content and then narrate it. So what we did was we identified in the similar way by mapping, okay, this is the core action of like completing a story, essentially, over and over and over again, like sign up and then complete a story, complete a story, complete a story. And we identified that the point at which someone had listened to 6 stories was the point at which people stopped to churn, really. So
Ooh,
we went from,
interesting.
40% drop off to a 30% drop off to a 20% drop off to a, all the way to down to like a 2% drop off, 2% drop off, 2% drop off. And so at this point, we can really see when someone gets to that action, the 6th action, then okay, now we don't really have to worry about them quite as much. They understand the product, they know what they're doing, they know that how they're navigating it, and they're really seeing value. So what we do then is we experiment with how do we get people to get to that point?
Hmm.
What do we do after? How do we get them to really, well, firstly get there as quickly as possible,
Yeah,
I'm
absolutely.
I am simplifying this a little bit. You might be able to hear the London sirens outside my window. Um, but we have to think about this activation funnel in parallel with our conversion funnel.
Hmm.
So these are the same thing as well. Whenever we're thinking about our conversion funnel, we've got, let's say for a subscription app, we've got that install, probably some kind of sign up onboarding flow, and then we're probably going to go to a free trial and then paying, right? But at the same time, you've got your activation funnel underneath running in parallel. And for the people who are not paying, or the 80% of people who don't pay or take out a free trial in your onboarding, it's really important for them as well to be able to experience some value so that we can convert them at a really high rate too.
So, kind of attaching now the two. So on the one hand, you want to get a user to use the app and not churn as a user, not necessarily as a paying user, but just as someone who's taking
Sure.
advantage of the features of the app. But then on the other, you also want to
Exactly.
get them to pay. So one of the things that are, in my mind, I think horrible that people do these days with apps is you open an app as a user, you see an onboarding, it might be long, it might be short, you don't really know what to expect. And then at the end, it's like, pay us $25 a month. Like, but
Mm-hmm.
why? I mean, what I saw may be cool, but I don't want that. And
Mm-hmm.
a lot of people will tell you, even people that I had on the show will tell you that even though it might be not the bestest, it does work and it does drive revenue conversion. But does it drive engagement and does it drive activation? Maybe. Is there a better way to do it? Also, maybe. Can we use activation to actually make this better by attacking the user only once they really need the app? So how do you convert the two, the activation and the conversion at that point?
It's a really good question. So, firstly, having your paywall in your onboarding flow is going to improve your conversion so dramatically that you're almost not going to care about uh, how people are being activated afterwards at some stages in your business, because at some stages all you're doing is thinking about how can I keep the lights on. I need to get some revenue in to keep my business going.
Hmm.
And so we need to be thinking like, what point in my business life cycle am I, number one, but also how mature is my product, how confident am I in my product. So you'll notice companies, some of the bigger ones, are not going to put you through this kind of same
Hmm.
onboarding funnel
Yep.
because they're confident that when people experience the value, they're going to stick around. Like, think about, probably, I don't know if you've recently played around on Duolingo. They are
Hmm.
so confident about their product offering that, they even show you a paywall until you've completed a lesson because
Hmm.
they make the product so easy to access that you're going to go in there and start playing. And then after you've done that, they show you the ATT pop up.
Yeah.
So usually we're putting the ATT pop up on first launch, but they'll show you the ATT pop up and then they'll show you a paywall, for example.
Yep.
And a lot of companies are just not able to do that because they don't have the brand capital. They don't have that connection with users. They don't have any of this stuff yet. You're a new company. And so when we've tested this stuff in the past, which we have extensively, we saw, okay, even if you do a 2-second delay on showing the paywall, that's going to crash your numbers.
Interesting.
Right? You want to get that in there. What we see typically is around 80% of all of your trial conversions, people opting into your trial, around 80% will happen in your onboarding flow.
Interesting. But that's
entire user life cycle.
Are we talking short-term revenue, or are we talking any sort of revenue at this point?
Pretty much any source of revenue for small, medium-sized apps. So, and I'm talking about trial opt-ins.
Yeah.
So you'll see that within that first 2 minutes of someone downloading and going through your onboarding flow, you're going to see such a huge spike on that first 2 minutes. I remember mapping this out and I was like, this has to be wrong. But no, it's correct. And over again, I've seen this across many products where these first 2 minutes are absolutely key. And so what we're thinking about is, okay, there's that 20% of people that don't come actually in the onboarding. That 20% of people who don't come in the onboarding are usually converting at 2x the conversion to paying as the onboarding people-ish. And that's because they've explored your product, they've looked around, they've experienced value, and they've made a conscious decision. Now, they're going into that trial period with higher intent.
Yep.
So this is kind of showing us about the importance of this activation period.
Yeah.
Right. If they're going in and they're seeing value and then they're going on to convert, they're going to convert higher, but they're going to convert twice as well, but it's going to get you 5 times more trials by putting it in the onboarding. So
it's a different mix.
To balance. Yeah, you have to balance these things.
And have you seen any sort of difference between the duration of the retention periods for people who activated through the onboarding versus people who activated through engagement?
As well that it's longer with people who who took out a trial or took out a subscription after the onboarding flow.
So that makes a lot of sense to me.
Because they've experienced this value, they've played around with the product, they've seen what you've got to offer, they've made a conscious decision. And so when we're thinking about that customer psychology behind all of this, it's kind of obvious when you think about it, but
it makes sense.
You don't really realize until you've looked at this data and you've seen like, oh wow, that's really stark what the differences are here. So
yeah, absolutely. So there's one question in the chat that I would like to answer very quickly, and it's kind of a good one. Let me bring it up. Let's see, where is this? So the question is, bring it up on the screen. Would you say that you can increase activation of users by better advertising targeting? It's an interesting question. I think it's a yes and a no and a maybe. Do you want to?
It is a yes and a no and a maybe.
Do you want to tackle this?
Firstly, I'm happy to, and then I'd love to know what you're thinking as well. But can I better activate users with different targeting? Okay, so firstly, there's a few parts to this question. Better targeting. Mostly, we're not really doing targeting anymore. That's kind of old. Doing targeting.
You heard that first. Targeting is old.
If you're going to be doing targeting, I really am trying to keep all my campaigns as broad as possible. And what I'm trying to do is do my targeting through my creatives. So the algorithms are so that even for extremely niche products, we can find the right users as long as we have the right creatives for them. And as long as we've educated the conversions API or with our data from our MMP or whatever we're using, as long as we're pouring that data in there and we've got enough data coming, actually the creative is our targeting. And so with that in mind, with the creative being our targeting, yes, we can absolutely prime users to activate better with our creative messaging up front. Because we have to think about it. How are we appearing in their mind's eye? What is this first touch point or 6th touch point or whatever it is within our ads that we're showing to them, which is helping convey our message? And so what I mean by that is if you're trying to say one message in your ad and then you have a different message in your onboarding flow, people are not going to retain or activate it as well because they're going to feel like this product matches the promise.
Yep.
And so what we can do is really zoom out. And actually, there's some really small things that you can do. Zoom out.
Hmm.
Yeah, this is what we were doing before while we're prepping. We were dancing. And so one of the things I did with another company was when I joined, I had 100% confidence that people did not understand the App Store listings. I really did. I was like, no one knows what is going on here.
Hmm.
And I love to have an opinion, but I love to back up my opinions with data. So I did what any good head of growth does, and I went out to the street and I kept showing the strangers on the street the App Store listing. And I was like, what do you think this app does? Like harassing them. Tell me. And they would tell me it was an audio journalism app, and the App Store screenshots said some stuff like sparkling opinions and stuff. And no one knew what it meant. And so I basically just took a type form with me, like this is how I would rate their comprehension of the product. It's called comprehension testing. And people had about 20% comprehension of what this product
Oh
did. So I
wow,
went
that's very low.
low. So I went back and just edited the screens on Photoshop or whatever myself, took them out again. What do you think this app does? And it got up to like 30%, then 40%. And so whenever we got up to about 90%, I went back, updated them in production. And then we actually saw that this impacted both of our conversion and our activation and our deep retention. Because actually, when people were coming in, they weren't thinking, people would tell me on the street, oh, is this an app that makes your phone screen brighter? Like, do I book events on this? People had
Yes.
no idea what that did. So your ad level, your ad level, your app store listing, your onboarding flow, all of this can have a huge impact on your activation rate overall. Good question.
Absolutely. It's so I have a yes and a no and a maybe, and also a side story. So a couple of days ago, I think on Monday, I went on Twitter and I said X, and I said I have an hour. Drop me the URL of your app, and I will tell you what you're doing wrong. And a lot of the things that people did wrong was actually not explaining what the app does. The icon was kind of generic enough because, and I get it. You think
Mhm.
it's nice to show something generic, and you don't want to go old school with things that actually pretend to be something else. But then the name was pretty plain. There might have been a bunch of keywords that didn't really align grammatically, so people are not really reading them. And then you look through all the screenshots, and it's just screenshots of app. You don't
Yeah.
really know what you want. So even if you're coming into this, even if you found the app and it was the number one for whatever search term that you typed, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to come in thinking, oh, I was looking for a flashlight calculator in this app that's called something totally unrelated. It has to be a flashlight calculator, right? So I have to get it, and I have to use the flashlight, and then I have to use the calculator. And the answer is
Mhm.
absolutely not. One, you're not going to get found because that's not how the algorithm works. But even beyond that, humans work a very similar way, as your example 100% showed. So step number one, look at what you're telling people. And it's the same for App Store optimization, and it's exactly the same for ads. You said that targeting is now moved to creatives, and that's very true for Facebook and for pretty much everything where you have creatives. In something like the App Store, your advertising and your targeting is going to be in your keywords. So if you have keywords that don't exactly align, and then keywords that don't exactly align with your screenshots, and you say something a little bit different, then people are going to download it and say, "Yeah, I don't know if this is for me. Like, it's a thing, but I don't know if it's for me." And you'll hit back, and then you'll find another app that says exactly what you want, and boom, they're getting the download, you're not getting the download. And it continues on to your onboarding, to your entire app if they're not getting that sense of, yeah, this is what I needed. And I did a live stream analyzing the onboarding of apps a few weeks ago, and that was exactly the same thing. I saw the onboarding, and I had no clue what was going on. No one introduced the app in a way that made sense.
Yeah.
We got a bunch of questions, and they wanted to know who I am, and they wanted to know how old I was for a running app and what are my fitness goals, but it didn't tell me that it's going to help me. So it's these little things, and human psychology is really exciting and interesting, but human psychology is also full of laziness. And so as soon as you understand that, the more you understand it, the more you realize that you have to help with the laziness and give people what they want. So better targeting could mean better activation because you're getting the right user. But it's not always that easy.
It's all about priming them,
Hmm.
right? It's like priming
Yep.
them. How can we prime these people as well as possible? And one of the things you just mentioned was around the screenshots. And maybe everybody listening knows, maybe they don't. But in September, Apple launched a very exciting new thing, which takes us right back to 2020, where we're able to now link our custom product pages,
Hmm.
which therefore means even our ads to a deep linked flow inside our app, which means okay, it means we can link to an onboarding flow that is custom, which doesn't have to be our organic main onboarding flow. So what does that mean? You've got an ad about with a specific message. You can go to an app store with a specific message, and you can link to an onboarding funnel with a specific message. And so at the moment, it's only on iOS 18, and it will only ever be on iOS 18. But there's about 70% adoption rate at this point now, I think. Maybe you'll know better, but it's going to roll out. It's never going to be 100% because some people are on older devices. But whenever you're thinking about who you're going to be targeting anyway, it's going to be these people if you want money. You don't. But if you're trying to get revenue, you're going to be wanting to target the people who are having these newer devices, who are, on these newer OSs anyway. And so it opens up a lot of new opportunities for us there too, to prime people and then pass them through to a really well optimized flow. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I think in general, everything that has to do with custom product pages is so interesting because you can really change the messaging of your app in ways that you are attracting. So you talked about priming before, and for those of you who don't know what that means is you show someone something and you get them thinking about that something. So then when you ask them about it later, they'll have that in their mind. That's the very simple explanation of this. And so that's the idea. But when you search specifically with keywords, it's kind of the same but backwards. When they come in with their intent, they're looking for that intent back in your screenshots, in your onboarding, in your paywall, in really anything that they can engage with. So ultimately, it's all about making sure that they see all these things that they want, and through ads, you can prime them for something they want, obviously, not something they don't care at all about, but something that they want. But you want to prime them to be said a specific way or done a specific way. And that's exactly what custom product pages are all about, because apps like sporting apps, which was the example, I think, when custom product pages started, that makes a lot of sense because people like their team. And some people like their teams more than others, and some people hate other teams more than others too. So if I show someone who, let's say, hates Arsenal, I don't know why, because I like Arsenal, but let's say you just hate Arsenal because he was from Manchester. If that happens, if you show them Arsenal's logo in the first screenshot, they might go like, no, I don't want that. That's not the app for me.
Yeah.
They don't get me, and go and download something else. But with custom product pages, you give them a link that shows them exactly the team they want, and they go, yes, that's for me. Easy. And if you can't do that throughout the app because you can't link the experiences, you'll lose them eventually in the process. And here you don't. Now, Apple did an amazing job, and those of us who are taking advantage of custom product pages and throughout are, it's really good for downloads. That's a topic for, I think, a whole other live stream.
I wanted to just say that, like with custom product pages, and then we'll move on.
Okay.
With custom product pages from our ads, we usually are thinking, okay, a 30% in click to install is a good metric. That's what we're aiming for.
Mm-hmm.
With custom product pages from our ads, so whenever we're working with companies, we're briefing in all of the ad creative, but we're also briefing in, whenever we've identified that as the biggest opportunity, what are the custom product pages too? How can we optimize this funnel?
Mm-hmm.
And so for some of our companies, we've got 60%, 70% plus
wow.
click to install based
Wow.
on custom product page. So our ad is matching extremely well with that custom product page. So the way in which we decide to do that is, okay, we've got really high click-through rate. We see an opportunity here. This is a very specific message. Let's tie that to a custom product page. And some of those ads have like a 40% install to trial rate, 42% install to trial rate. It's significant by making sure that this is the right message based on customer insight, based on us talking to real people. Now we're optimizing that flow. So it is significant, the work that you can do with quite little effort. There's big impact for some of this stuff.
Oh, absolutely. I think you can get to really like 90% of doing things right with very minimal effort. 90 to 100 is going to be incredibly challenging, but up to 90, and 90 will get you a very long way. So that's very true. And we should definitely have a whole live stream on custom product pages, because I can talk about that for hours as well. That'll be fun.
Love it.
All right. So you have to come back.
Okay.
Done. That's my trick. I get people to agree to come back on the show in front of other people, and that's why they have to come back, because he said yes in public. You're not going to back out anymore.
Yeah, if the people will have me back, I'll come back and talk a bit more about custom product pages. I can show you some real examples as well.
Oh, of course. The people I think will definitely have you back, but you brought up a good point. If you like what you're watching so far, give us a like so we know that you like it so Hannah can come back and we can talk about custom product pages or something else. I think we can talk about many things. It's going to be fun.
Yeah, comment, subscribe.
Exactly. Like, leave a thing in the chat, ask us questions. There are some more questions in the chat, but there's one more that I just want to touch on very quickly, and then we'll get to another one that will take us to where we want to be. Nathan is asking, because we said targeting is dead, Nathan is asking if targeting is really dead and it should not be used at all. And I think the answer to that is not exactly. We're exaggerating a little bit here. You should still target your ads in some capacity, unless you have infinite money, right? Am I off here?
It's divisive. We don't do
Oh
any
no,
targeting.
not at all. So you show
So
ads to everyone, old and
the
young.
algorithm. So we can basically assume at this point that Lattice AI, which is Meta's AI, is smarter than us
Okay,
at targeting. It has
I
hundreds
see.
of billions of data points, and within, I don't know if you know that, in I think it was 2014, so 10 years ago, by the way,
Mm-hmm.
there was a study that said if you've interacted with like 300 things on Meta, on
Mm-hmm.
Facebook at the time, it wasn't
Yeah,
Meta, Facebook knows you better than your partner.
I read that many
So if
years
you
ago.
liked 300 things or commented or whatever, it knows you better than you know your partner. So imagine I have been on these platforms since 2007. How long is that? I don't nearly 20 years. So these platforms know me better than I know myself almost. And so whenever I'm putting that creative in, the algorithm is reading what it says and it's delivering to people. So
Mm-hmm.
your first couple versions are not going to be very good. They might be a bit more expensive, but as it starts to learn, it's going to get better. So we're targeting things as extremely niche and extremely specific through the creative with no targeting and
Mm-hmm.
building profitable businesses in this way. So it's really
Interesting.
about the power of that creative. And if
Mm-hmm.
anyone wants me to explore some examples later on, you can message me on LinkedIn. It might take a day or two to reply, but I can send you over some examples of that. I actually did a talk about this exact topic about a month ago.
Interesting.
And right after it, I had people messaging me like, I've changed my entire business strategy based on this talk. And they're already seeing great results
Oh wow.
because what we've done in the past is, okay, we're going to target 25 to 35 with this specific message. They're going to be women who are interested in breathing exercises.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, the algorithm just knows better who is going to this is
Hmm.
going to resonate and convert. The only time we put in targeting is if it really is not able to be used by a certain demographic. Like we made a product, or we didn't make it, we're working with and helping with the product on some founders on an app that was just for women. So we did do the targeting just for women, for
Okay.
example. But that was the only targeting we did. But we've got extremely niche products that are completely open targeting.
Wow. So trust the algorithm is what you're saying.
Trust the algorithm to a certain extent, but make sure you're still manually optimizing your campaigns and being really proactive with that side of things.
Yep.
Put creative in, you're testing through the creatives to see what is going to resonate.
Yep.
This is with the mindset anyone should be able to be your customer, probably, but you need a little bit of a different message to convert them. Really depends. I've had conversations with people who are making apps for builders to measure things, right? It's pretty niche.
Yeah.
But they're still doing their targeting with just their creative, and it's working successfully. So putting that customer language in there, making sure that your creative is really good and resonating, this is really key. And you'll notice that with Google Ads, for example, they removed targeting from their app. There is no targeting.
Yeah.
They removed in 2016, I think. That's a long time ago, 8 years, nearly 9 years, they removed that. It might have even been 2015 they removed that. In 2019, Meta launched automated app ads, which is now called Advantage Plus something or other. And that removed targeting as well. So they still have targeting capabilities on some of the manual campaigns, but they've been stripping that back and back and back and back. And I'm not going to be surprised when they remove targeting completely in the next couple of years from those, because we test them regularly. We're constantly testing manual versus automated, and we might want to keep a small bit of, depending on how much budget you've got. Like if you've got loads of money you're spending, you might want to keep a bit manual, but otherwise the automated campaigns are going to perform stronger for you and more efficiently.
Oh wow. Okay. So that's actually really great because that means that your ads have to do exactly what your screenshots do in a sense. They have to really sell to the right audience and resonate with the right user. So the next question we have will continue. Will take us to the next stage of this. And the question is, which methods would you say are, in order of importance slash impact? So this is a question is complicated. The best for user
Love.
activation and why? Notifications, welcome emails, good onboarding, etc. Is that even the right question to ask?
It's not quite.
I had a
So
sneaking suspicion.
the first thing, it's a good question though. It's a long answer. So firstly, what we need to do is think about what is the area that if we impact this area of our business will have the biggest impact on our North Star metric. Okay. And for some businesses, that will be activation because they're acquiring really well, they've got really good cost per installs or something, but then people are just not sticking around and converting. What we want to do is think about is everything that we can do to impact activation, and everything we can do to impact activation is everything up until the point of activation and everything that happens before that. Okay, so that means your ads impact activation, like we've spoken about. It means that your custom product page impacts activation. It means your onboarding, screen one, screen two, screen N. It means your push notifications, your homepage. It means everything. And so what we're normally doing is doing a big brainstorm around what are all of the different areas that we can impact, and then effort, impact scoring, and confidence scoring them so that we can get a score for these and then start working through them. And so there are not necessarily one of these things that I can say that if you tweak that is going to have the biggest impact on your business specifically, because I don't know what your overall numbers are. I don't know how your push notifications are performing. I don't know how your emails are performing. But if you want to share with me some benchmarks later on LinkedIn, I can let you know where I would be focusing. But yeah, I would be saying zoom out. What is the area that you can impact with the least effort first? And sometimes that's your ads. I have launched ads that have had between 50% day 30 retention and the ad, say a different ad with just different messaging having a 10% day 30 retention. And so this is just that message, that first upfront message that we're priming people with. And so putting that into someone's head up front can sometimes be the biggest impact. So like with the app that I was mentioning, I went out on the street and I spoke to people, changing the product pages. It was before custom product page existed. Changing the product pages had a huge impact. But equally, I've worked with another app, and the thing that impacted activation the most was this was an app that helped you track your eco actions. So imagine you recycle, or you have leftovers, or you take the bus. You would track those actions, and if you you wanted to do at least one eco action per day. And the thing that impacted day 30 retention, but also activation for us, was putting into the onboarding flow, adding one screen which just said, how long do you want to commit to this for? Like 30 days or how many weeks? And then just pressing a big button that said, I'm committed. So we added that in there, and that doubled our day 30. And so
That's
I can't
incredible.
tell you.
Sometimes you
Yeah,
just have to say something.
it's just experimenting. So I
Hmm.
can't tell you what's the one that's going to have the biggest impact, but I can tell you the number of experiments that you have will be directly, as long as they're good experiments and you're not doing something silly, will be directly correlated to the success that you have.
So I think zooming out, we're zooming out a lot today. This whole thing today's live stream should have been called "Zooming Out" with Sarah. But if we zoom out a little bit, so this goes back to pretty much everything else that I've been talking about in the past when it comes to what is the best keyword for my app, what is the best popularity score for my app, how long should my
Mhm.
onboarding be, what should my price be. It's all really relying on you trying things and as
And
you and trying things properly, of course, and tracking the results and kind of doubling down on what works. So if you were to think of what sort of a mindset would you go into, let's say a brand new app that you have never done, that you would try to increase retention and then try to grow activation, where would you start? What would you test first?
Mhm. How new is this app in your
uh
mind?
I didn't really have an app in mind, but let's say it's fairly new. It's been around for about a month, maybe two. They didn't collect too much
Okay,
information, so you don't have a
cool.
lot to go off of, but it's got some traction.
Perfect.
It's getting downloads. It's ranked in some keywords. Hasn't done ads.
Okay. I'm working with a product exactly the same as what you're describing right now.
Boom.
So I'll tell you exactly what we're doing.
Perfect.
So the very first thing that we're doing is really, and by the way, I don't even want to tell you about their onboarding flow. There, there isn't one. So what we're doing up front is talking to customers. This is stage
Okay.
one for any business. And so what we're doing is psychology conversations. These are not product interviews where we're like, what do you think of the app?
Okay.
We're asking, what were you doing when you thought about it? How would you describe it?
Hmm.
What was it that was going through your mind? How did expectations meet reality? We're trying to understand context,
Yep.
and we're also trying to understand their language. So
How are
this is
you
the very first
how are you
one.
getting to these people? So we talked about customers a lot, but do you do it through the app? Is there a different channel to do it? Do you just go to talk to random strangers on the street?
Depends. It depends on your product and how
Hmm.
accessible you have people around you.
Okay.
But really, you want to have people that have discovered your product in some way,
Okay.
whether that's through a recommendation or a referral, or they saw it on Reddit, or they whatever, or they saw an ad, or whatever it is. And usually, then we just send them an email. So we just say, "Hey, I'm Hannah. I'm the founder of X app. I've just launched, and I've noticed that you've been using it. Would really love to get some of your feedback. Have you got 15 to 20 minutes spare? I would really appreciate it. I really want to build a product that you love."
Hmm. So very
Done.
casual, very direct, no
Yeah,
BS
send
type
that
thing.
over to them. Get on the phone, ideally a video call so you can see them
Yeah. Body
moving.
language.
And exactly, and then start to look at the conversation that you're having. Pull
Hmm.
out their language. How are they articulating your product? This
Interesting.
is very so that we can start to put the way in which they are articulating your product into our ads. So we don't want to just talk to one person, it's not
Yep.
just Mabel that we're talking to. We want to talk to at least 10, 20 people to start
Hmm.
to build out these are our foundational learnings. And then we'll go and start validating some of these.
Yeah.
So this is stage one.
Okay.
The next things are, okay, how are we acquiring people
Hmm.
and thinking about from that perspective? If you really are a brand new product, you're not really starting to think about activation in that way first, because it's going to take you 500 years to try and get any learnings from your A/B test, because you're only going to be getting 5 people downloading or something, a day, not that or more. But it depends on
Not
your product.
enough. Yep. Not enough.
Not enough. So the first thing we're going to do is think about how we're bringing people in and making sure that those are some of the right people that we're bringing in. So that could be through communities, through Facebook groups, Reddit channels, like Product Hunt, telling your friends, things like this that can be
Hmm.
really effective. Now, I'm just talking about the standard app. There are many that launch and they've done really great kind of pre-launch strategies
Yeah.
where they've up a huge waiting list and they've built a whole referral system where people can refer people to move up the waiting list and so on. And so it really depends on the kind of acquisition volume that you've got coming in to test
Hmm.
with, because you've got that in a good place and you can start testing with activation. It's a little bit of a different circumstance. And at that point, we would go back to that kind of big brainstorm
Hmm.
that we discussed before. Do a big brainstorm, start to prioritize everything, and then start working through that big backlog there.
Makes sense. Makes sense. So when you say the big brainstorm, you're thinking what are the actions that people can take within the app, mapping those out, and then starting to understand how to measure them, or is there more to this?
If I'm thinking about what I can do to impact my activation, I would be thinking about, okay, here are all the screens in my app. Firstly, we're doing some data analysis before we have this brainstorm,
Hmm.
but we'd be looking at
Ideally.
first, ideally. So ideally, you've got some tracking in your app as well, everybody.
Hmm.
But we would be doing some analysis, looking at, okay, here are some opportunities, but we'd also be looking at, okay, how's our custom product page? Or how's our product page converting? If we're running ads, how are our ads? Like, are we getting the right people through from our ads? All of this stuff that can impact activation. And
Hmm.
so we would have a big brainstorm where we're saying, okay, optimize onboarding, put in a quiz, change the paywall, do this, all of this stuff.
Hmm.
Ads, product pages, the messaging, the title, that icon, like all of this stuff, all of these are variables that we can test.
Yep.
And then we're going to prioritize them. Some of them are going to be, whenever we're thinking about an effort and impact score,
Hmm.
we're doing 1 to 5 for effort and 5 to 1 for impact.
Okay.
And so if it's high impact and low effort, you will do 5 times 5 and you'll get 25. And you
Okay.
can think of the ones that score 25 as your low hanging fruit. You can just
Mm.
start going through those. Low
Okay.
effort, high impact.
Okay.
As you start to get a bit further down, you're going to have some 20s. They're also low hanging fruits. And
Hmm.
then you're going to start to find some which are high impact, but high effort.
Okay.
These are the ones that are a bit more work. And what we do not want to do is go and start building some complicated product feature based on a hypothesis that we jotted down on a post-it note.
Yeah.
We want to then break it down into something that we can validate. And we're probably going to want to validate this through email, push notification, conversation, things like this.
Yep.
Do it in a really unscalable manual way first,
Yep.
just for a little bit, see how it's working, and
Yeah.
then start building that kind of thing into your product. So yeah, full store tests are really nice too here.
I really like this flow. I think this flow, it might sound a little bit overwhelming and a little bit complicated if you haven't done this before, but you don't have to go through all of these steps initially. You can test one thing. You can test your icon, or you can test the length of your onboarding, or you can put in a quiz like you said. And when we had a live stream on onboarding optimization a few live streams ago, we went through all these different things that you can do about how it's a give and take. So you can give more and you can take less, or you can take more and give less. And
Right.
ultimately, all of that eventually you will be able to try every single thing that we just went through. So if it sounds overwhelming and it sounds like there's so many things, I don't know what to do, don't do all the things, just do one at a time. And that's still enough to get you going in the right direction. But you have to think about it this way. Like you have to see it as I'm going to figure out what my image is, what people expect. And then I'm going to figure out how to talk about what I do in the way that people expect, and then I'm going to make sure that it's happening throughout, and I'm going to measure and get to that point where they're really starting to use the app. And I think that's the key. So how do you know when someone really starts to use the app? What is your method for deciding that's it, that's the point of activation, I will optimize this until the end of days?
I will tell you, I just want to touch on what you said there, which was it can feel overwhelming. And it is overwhelming. There is so much to do. And the point of all of this is finding out what is the most impactful work you can do right now and doing just that.
Hmm.
And so, I mean, if you're a small team, even if you're 5, 6 people, everyone in your whole business should be focusing on just that.
Hmm.
So if it's even if it's acquisition, that's your focus. Even your developers, your product people should be focusing on acquisition, not just like your lone marketer.
Yeah.
How can your team and your product person, if you're not having a head of growth, focus on acquisition as well? Like, what are the features that can be built into the product to improve that? Because you don't want anyone to be working in a silo at an early stage of your business. If you're just a solo founder as well,
Hmm.
it's still key to this process and identify what's my most impactful work. And so, whenever we're thinking about how we can identify what is that point of activation, what we do, I mentioned a little bit before, but what we do is we look at that core action.
Hmm.
So take audio journalism app. The core action was someone listening to a story,
Hmm.
right? Clicking play. We thought at the beginning clicking play was something around activation, but we identified that, okay, when we look at play and we look at completion, there's a huge drop off. Why is no one completing this?
Hmm.
And we just had an existential crisis, like, why is no one using this properly? And we started to then look at, okay, 25%, people are getting to 25%. Okay, so something's happening after 25. Oh, people are getting to 50%. Strange. People are getting 75%. People are getting 90%.
Hmm.
And we realized that every single story had an outro that everyone skipped.
Ah,
So we
interesting.
saw, okay, listen to 90% of each of the stories was your core action. So you've found some value there.
Hmm.
So what we did then was in a product analytics tool, you can use any good product analytics tool. We mapped a funnel. So very, very simple. We created that event, listen 90%, and then we mapped a funnel from sign up or first app open or whatever you want to do as your kind of early stage event, depending if you've got a sign up or not. And then we did listen 90%, listen 90%, listen 90% up until N amount of times. So we mapped it loads and loads of times. And then we looked at what the drop-offs were.
Hmm.
So I mentioned before we had from first app open to first listen, like a 40% drop-off. And then we would see a smaller drop-off and a smaller drop-off. The point at which you have a drop-off which doesn't change, so it's not falling off your drop-off, this is the point at which people are really finding value and they're activated inside your product. So it is sounding a lot simpler the way I'm describing it than it is in reality, because what we're looking at is firstly the overall blended activation rate when we're
Hmm.
looking at that. And ultimately, what we need to do later that on after this is we have to do this on a individual user level
Yeah.
whenever we get a bit more complicated. And we're also going to be looking at the time in which it takes for someone to get to that point. So it might take someone 12 days to get to 6 listens,
Hmm.
and that's the average.
Yeah.
But it might take you 4 days and it might take you 20 days. And so we need to understand then what is our frequency cycle per user. So we've got
Hmm.
our average frequency cycle, so user base 2 days, but then you have 3 days and I've got 1 day or whatever it is. And so then we start to understand, okay, if I haven't listened for 1 day, I've started to churn. But if you haven't listened to 1 day, you're still super active because you only listen every 3 days anyway.
Hmm.
So this is going to help us really understand, okay, people are activated and they're still active versus they're activated and they're churning, basically.
That makes a lot of sense, especially early in the beginning, because you still have that when someone subscribes, they're still helping with activation. They may not be fully activated when they subscribe, either because they just landed and somehow they were part of the 80% that ended up paying right after the onboarding. But at the same time, they gave you money, so they are probably more likely to try. Not long-term try, because that's up to the app to fully activate them, but at least try. But that still doesn't mean that they're going to continue. So you really have to think about it that way. And I think thinking about it at the user level is really interesting because people are so different, even when you think you have the user and the one user that works really well for you. But ultimately, even if you start with the average up top, it feels like that's the natural progression of how different are you from the average. So you need to have an average first. You need to benchmark your users, and then you continue from there.
Exactly.
So it's an iterative process, just like pretty much everything else when it comes to marketing, in my opinion, and I
Yeah.
think pretty much everything else in life. But the idea is that to start, you really need to understand your app, and you need to understand how other people understand your app, and then you can go as deep as even at the personal level. What does this one guy think, or this one girl thinks, or this one user who I really want thinks? And it sounds like you take a very scientific approach to all of this. Everything is data oriented, everything is backed by numbers, as opposed to, I think all of my users like this button, so let me put it here. I think all of my users will love this visualization that I created. And I think once people move away, shift away from that thinking, because it's the same for App Store optimization, and it's the same for Apple search ads when you try to optimize them, and it's the same for ad creatives. People don't necessarily like what you like. So
No.
you're saying
Right.
go after the numbers and find these conversion points and think about it iteratively. They started here. Did they go here? Yes or no? Then from here, did they go here? Yes or no? I really like that approach.
Exactly.
And I think that's how you get to good activation.
Yeah. What I'm also saying is just to synthesize what you just said, assumptions kill companies.
So true.
You
So
don't
true.
want to assume, yeah,
Hmm.
you don't want to assume anything. Don't assume that what your opinion is correct.
Yep.
Talk to people, look at your data, and really understand it from that perspective generally.
Yep. I think that makes a lot of sense. And that also brings us to the end of our live stream. I don't know how, but I feel like we just started 2 minutes ago. So we must have talked about a lot of fun stuff. Closing words, is there anything that you think, the one thing people should take from this live stream? What do you think that should be?
The one thing that you should take is talk to your customers and test everything. Don't assume that like just talk to them. They're not scary. They'll tell you the answers. They really will tell you the answers.
I fully believe that. I like talking to customers. I think I know a lot of people who don't like talking to strangers, and that makes it a lot more difficult for them. So to those, I would say get over the fear and send them an email. That's a good starting point. But really, it's so important. That's how AppFigure started, by talking to people. And I think that's how most good apps become even better. So
Hmm.
go home and talk to your customers. And if you're already home, talk to your customers. It's a good starting point. Thank you very much,
Yeah.
Hannah. This was amazing. There's so much more that I can talk about, that we can talk about. So we'll gladly have you back. But how can people find you? Is LinkedIn the best way to find you?
LinkedIn is great. You can Google my name, Hannah Parvaz, Parvaz. I'm the only one, so you'll find me
But the
quite
only
easily.
one.
Um, Otherwise, LinkedIn is the best place. So connect with me, send me your messages over, and let me know if there's anything I can take a look at. It was great to
Perfect.
chat with you, Ariel. Thank you
Well,
for
thank
having me. I
you.
really, really
Thank you for being here. This was, again, amazing. I had a feeling this would be great. This exceeded expectations. We're going to drop your LinkedIn URL into the description of the video so people can find you
just
later. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Again, thank you, Hannah. And thank you for all the wisdom and telling us about your actual experience. To me, that's the most important of all. And I believe this is the last live stream I'm going to do this year because we have the holidays coming up. But I will see you very early in January to talk about something. You'll have to keep an eye out on your inbox to know what I'm going to be talking about next. So stay tuned, and I will see you all later. Thank you, Hannah. Goodbye, everyone.